Dear all, welcome to our Learning, Monitoring and Evaluation webinar series. Thank you very much for joining our webinar. We are very happy to have as our guest speaker Simran Shaikh with us, who is a Sexuality, Gender and Rights Senior Program Officer at India HIV/AIDS Alliance. My name is Emese Kovács. I'm a Learning, Monitoring and Evaluation Specialist at Amplify Change, and I'm going to be the moderator of today's webinar. I just would like to share a few housekeeping rules for the webinar. So as you may know, this webinar is going to be recorded and the slides and the recording will be available on the Amplify Change website, both in English and in French. Each session includes a 30-minute presentation that will be followed by a Q&A. So Simran is going to talk for 30 minutes and share in the HIV/AIDS Alliance's work, and then Simran will be able to answer questions. You can ask questions through the chat box, which is in the right-hand side bottom corner of your screen. As you can see, there's an introductory message, and also Liz just sent a message that she's really looking forward to hearing about Simran's work. So this is how you can add questions. If you have any, please feel free to ask any questions during the presentation as well, but Simran will be answering them only after the presentation. So this is our eighth webinar in this series, and you will be able to find all the previous webinars on our website if you go on the Amplify Change website, if you are interested in other topics as well. So with this short introduction, I just would like to pass the floor to Simran now.
Namaskar. Thank you so much, Amshar, for introducing me. I look forward for this beautiful webinar. And as I'm supposed to be the presenter for today, so I basically am sharing the work that has been done on transgender women and a subset of a larger umbrella of transgender called as hijras in India, which is very prominent. The work that we do on them is today's webinar all about. I would also like to take a minute and greatly thank the Amplify Change, just not because they have hosted this webinar, but because of their support that we have been able to do this beautiful intervention in India with a sizable population of transgenders and hijras. So as you can see that my title says as Wajood. Wajood is an Urdu Urdu language word, which means existence of transgenders in India. And that's where I really wanted to start this presentation, that we do exist and our lives does matter. The title of this presentation is Empowering Transgenders and Hijras to Access Their Sexual Health on Their Own, at the same time having their human rights perspectives in India. By having said this, this is also the title of our intervention, Wajood, which has been which I'll be talking explicitly. Can we go to the next slide, please? Before actually we going to the entire presentation, I wanted to set a realistic context to this presentation. And before even actually setting this context, let me tell just one sentence about myself, that I'm a trans woman. So my preferred pronouns are she, her, hers. And I would highly appreciate if the lovely people who are there out here would address me by my name, Simran, or by my preferred pronoun, she or hers. With that statement, it's very important to understand the universe of the transgender population when we are talking about India. And let me remind you, India is just not a country. India is a mini continent. As you can see, and you can believe, we are the second largest highly populated country around the globe, with 1.37 billion population, which is very, very prominent in India, with almost around 300 different languages which are spoken in this country. And this country is a vast, diverse country presenting the race, the ethnic, the human culture, and the gender binaries, if we have to say this. So, a report from UNAIDS GAP report in 2014 did mention that transgender population is somewhere between 1.1% of the total population, which is on the reproductive age, what we call as youth, or the age of adults in India. And by having said that statement of 1.1%, I just wanted to draw your attention of India's population, which is 1.37 billion. Now consider, if I don't consider that 0.37, if I just consider 100 million population, and I consider the UNAIDS GAP report's statement of 1.1%, we have almost around 10 million population who are open and out transgenders in India. And of course, when we talk about Asia Pacific, this goes much way beyond. However, in 2011, and since 2011, we did not have the Sensex counting happening in India, but in 2011, the population that was counted was 4.9 million as transgenders in only 18 high priority states. And among those 18 priority states also, we had around 55,000 children at the age group of 0 to 6 reported as trans kid. This number is really, really huge, significant, and something to be, taken as a footnote when we run through the presentation complete across. Can we go to the next slide, please? So this is where Wajud intervention comes into existence. Wajud, as I said, is a Urdu word which means existence. The Wajud intervention is being supported by Amplify Change in 5 states and 6 sites of this country. And when I mean to say 6 sites, one of our states, Karnataka, has 2 sites. And that is why we have 6 sites of this project. The thematic area of this intervention focuses on sexual health of transgenders, gender-based violence, mitigating and reporting of gender-based violence, and challenging the stigma, discrimination, attitudes of laws. Of course, our objective stands very, very clear that we completely focus on strengthening the community systems for transgenders and hijras by expanding the access to quality of sexual health services, which also includes the reproductive, the SRHR needs of transgenders. Now you may be wondering that how come SRHR really fits into the transgender umbrella? Well, that's a question, and I will talk about it. We are trying to increase the awareness of reporting of gender-based violence and sexual violence among transgenders and hijras. And we are also trying to support the community-led efforts done for the policy change when it comes to the transgenders and hijras. Our consortium partners varies from Sangama, which you can see in the blue star down south, which follows by a green stars in the India map, which is our own partner of Alliance India Regional Office. Then we do have in the west in Gujarat, we have one of our intervention, and at the National Capital of India, Delhi, we run one intervention. Can we go to the next slide, please? So by having said this, what is all about Wajud? Wajud stands very clearly on its objective. When it comes about empowering, when it comes about documenting the violence and mitigating the violence, and when it comes about changing the social attitudes of laws in terms of transgenders. So what do we stand for? We stand very clearly for empowerment, envisaging, and enabling. The reason why I have put these three circles and which are interlinking with each other is this principle behind it, which is very clear that when there is an enabling environment for transgenders, um, it is it is notified and it is evidently proven that transgender women go and seek their sexual health services on their own. But if I'm discriminated at the gate of the hospital, that's where I would be reluctant to really go and take my services. So what we are doing is we are envisaging, we are creating an enabling environment. At the same time, we are empowering so that transgender women really go and seek their sexual health services on their own. Can we go to the next slide, please? This is the most complicated slide of my presentation, and I would take a few minutes on this slide. But this slide is basically on when we talk about empowering, when we are talking about creating an enabling environment and generating and collecting the evidence, what are we actually forcing? What would be the outcomes of this if we have all this happening together? It is very clear from our studies and from our intervention that we only empower the trans-led organizations by building their capacity of just not individuals but also institutions, which is very evidently proven that they then stand as their own sustainable model. This happens on a rigorous, regular push and pull. When I say push and pull is because it's just not once a year that we build our capacity. It's the constant every quarter that we touch base upon them, and that's how their capacity builds eventually. When we talk about establishing or building their skills within them, it's not that we take away their rights. It's just that we open different avenues for them. While we talk about skill buildings and trying to identify that what is their actual skills that they want to develop, and not something that we want to push our agenda. into their peripherals. That's where we we have this skill building programs and life skill education camps, which gets us towards opening avenues and opening doors for them to seek their desired profession. When we talk about creating enabling environment, and later in my slides you would see, we all very evidently know that transgenders basically lack with their legal documents to be on their preferred gender and preferred name. It is quite difficult for them to change their basic legal documentation. This is only because of two reasons. One is because they leave their homes, their biological parents, at a very early age in India, because of the harassment, because of the bully, because of the non-acceptance within the society. And that's where they go completely uneducated. They miss their complete education, and at the same time they also miss their certificates, their legal documentation. And that's where we come into the picture by ensuring that they can avail and get back to their educations. That's where we try our level best to change their legal documents into their preferred name and gender. And of course, this is completely possible only after 2014, the Honorable Supreme Court of India passing the judgment and legalizing the third gender in the books of laws. Can we go to the next slide? So as you can see, the key strategies, the approaches that we do under each three basic objectives of Vajud, and they stand very explicitly out and open. But we, at the same time, we also have a new capsule that talks about economic empowerment. And I would go through this after I read out the sexual health components that is from the community mobilization. And community mobilization does not exist only in the urban parts of the country, but also towards the rural parts of the country. That is identifying transgenders and ensuring that they come to the centers and they feel free at that center. While we talk about sexual health only does not focus on HIV, and HIV, but it goes beyond HIV and focuses on the explicit need of a transgender woman, and that's feminization. For a trans woman, always it is the most important part for a transgender woman is feminization. It's not HIV. HIV is the secondary part. But for a trans woman, the first priority is getting rid of their facial hairs. It's ensuring that they get proper referrals for their hormonal treatment, getting their breast augmentation doctors at their peripherals, and ensuring that all these linkages and all this service providers are basically friendly without having any stigmatized or judgments being passed on these women. So that's where our sexual health package completely counts in our Wajud intervention. The second, when we talk about gender-based violence, it's just not about documenting the gender-based violence, but when we talk about gender-based violence, is also ensuring how do we address the gender-based violence on the trans women. It is very funny, and you might find it very funny, but actually in India, If a partner of a transgender woman slaps her, it is considered to be as love, according to the lens of a transgender woman. It is quite difficult to explain them that the slap is just not a love, but it's also a violation of yourself, of your dignity. And that's where we actually come from. We also try to provide counseling for trauma and violence. Now, this is very interesting because the counseling does not sort of just counsel the client, the beneficiary, but we also try to build their self-coping mechanisms of how to address such kind of situation on their own. Rather than they being vulnerable, how do I build my self-coping mechanism to address such kind of situation? That's where we come from. We keep a very strong and very vigilant media watch on the reports and incidents that have been happening on transgender women. And we have in the past, and we have intervened with many media houses at the grassroots level, where we try to ensure the words such as eunuchs, the words which are very, very derogative for transgenders, are not being used. And they have ensured with dignity and with respect, respectful words are being used while they are, publishing any sort of media report for transgenders. That's all comes under the gender-based violence capsule. When we talk about the social well-being, we talk about from institution to individual capacity building. We talk about various linkages to the government schemes that are available for non-trans individuals, and we ensure they are well enrolled in that schemes. And some of the schemes that we have very successfully been trying to motivate, and we have successfully ensured that transgenders are getting these services, are housing schemes which are open for marginalized groups. We also have ensured pension schemes above the age of 40, when a transgender falls more vulnerable, we have ensured that they start getting their pension. These are some of the social well-being capsules, but not forgetting that we have also enrolled many individuals under the vocational trainings and institute, where people have left their basic educations, and now at this age it's very difficult for them to go back to schools. Hence, due to that fear and shame, they don't opt to go to their school in spite of they being willing to go to the school. So we have started now enrolling them into vocational trainings, where they can be freely availing their left out educations and come back on the track. Now, the fourth track, which you see, completely talks about economic empowerment. Now, you must be wondering that Simran initially just said that Wajud focuses on three basic pillars. Where did this economic empowerment came from? Well, when you merge these three objectives with a larger goal, it's all about economics. It is all about empowerment, and empowerment comes with economics. This is what we believed, and that's where we talk about how can we, further link our transgenders for microfinancing, and to, initiate their own intervention. In India, it is very, very prominent for transgender women to be in three basic categories. And sorry, and please don't be offended when I say categories, but this is what people call us. They are used to see transgenders either at the red light signals while begging. They often see us at the night wearing short dresses for sex work, and they often see us at the day broad light, on singing and dancing on the celebration of either of someone's wedding or childbirth. But apart from that, it is very difficult for people to see us in a white collar jobs, having our own businesses, and facing the world as a proud entrepreneurs. And that's where we have taken up this challenge by creating, within the empowerment, how can we build in the economic empowerment and create that livelihood options for this individuals. So that's our fourth overall goal that we envisage to see. Can we go to the next slide, please? So as I was saying, while we were talking about envisaging, um, we basically know that it's quite difficult to change your gender on your legal passport. However, Wajud is really proud to let everyone know that we have managed to change 1,598 individuals' legal documents. And when we talk about legal documents, it's about their preferred names and preferred gender. This infographics basic slide was also presented during the IAS 2018 at where was this IAS? Oh God, I forgot. Um, okay, but this was also presented at the IAS 2018 with a oral poster presentation. Can we go to the next slide? You see these two beautiful pictures of one where you see transgenders sitting with drums and clapping their hands. This is the traditional um, source of income. What we call in India is badai, where majority of trans women are into it. And the second picture where you see is about the social development, where these women stand up for their um, own rights, and when they talk about how to lead a life with dignity, equality, and employability. And this is the picture that we thought it could be shared within this best learning practices about Wajud, that this is where we came from, and this is now where we are right now. Can we go to the next slide, please? You might have heard very recently that in spite of our continuous support in continuous advocacy, political advocacy with our Indian government, we did not manage to change and have our desired transgender protection bill. And unfortunately, this bill was passed a week ago at the both the house at the upper house and the lower house, and now it will be formulated into an act. But we are not discouraged. We are not. We are not going to be silenced. And in fact, this has enlightened and given us more power to do and keep our advocacy going on. And this is where we come when we talk about enabling environment. In spite of hurdles, in spite of um, every second step that we face with stigma, the race is not over. And one day will come where people will understand, that transgenders do matter and their lives does matter. When we talk about enabling environment, we just not focus on the political agendas, but also we do a lot of sensitization on on healthcare providers, from the gatekeepers to the hospital deans, from the local um, police officer to a high level police commissioner, from the normal member of parliament to the prime minister of this country. That's where we sort of do our enabling advocacies in this country. Can we go to the next slide? These are some of the glimpses that which captures our our beautiful national advocacy that we call in India as Hijra Habba. This Hijra Habba actually is a it's a Kannada term which means amalgamation of transgenders and Hijras, and where we have now made it as a national advocacy initiative, where we come up every year with a different theme of either sensitizing the government, the political parties, sensitizing the stakeholders, or even the policy makers for having a transgender inclusive atmosphere. We also have published our beautiful case study, which is tagged as Beyond Being, and it has beautiful case studies of case stories of Vajood programs across the country. Can we go to the next slide? As this photo completely clearly says, this is Mr. Gautam Gambhir. Gautam Gambhir is an ace cricketer and currently is a member of parliament from Delhi. Um, he has been a very biggest support of transgender community and has been ensuring past 2 years that he be part of all the national events or all the national debates that happen for transgender, and that is why we call him our trans ally individual person. Can we go to the next? Going forward, I just wanted to show that the current Vajood achievements are, we are almost around 88%. Sorry, I'm presenting the data till September 2019. We still have 3 months more data to be presented, but I did not manage to get the time to collect the data. But this data is only till September. We are currently, our denominator for the entire Vajood is 10,000 transgender across 6 sites of and 5 states of this country. Our currently target, what we have achieved is around 88%, and out of which around 84% have been tested with HIV, and the prevalence among those 84% is 1.9. Sorry, this is not the prevalence, but these are the actual tested HIV individuals that has been um, come out from this population. As I mentioned, we have almost around 1,593 clients who have received their legal documentation on their preferred gender and preferred name. We have ensured that 156 transgenders are being currently supported under various skill building initiatives of Vajood intervention. We have 16 proud transgenders who have resumed back to their education through Indira Gandhi Open University, and they are currently studying right now. And The way forward of this virtue that we see right now is, to some extent, we have built the community systems of the places where we have intervened. And now it's time to go beyond, because India, I started my statement by saying India is just not a country, it's a mini continent. And that's where we come from back again, that we need to go beyond this and start building, start working from the scratch. And that's where we are right now. Um, we are focusing on every state having a transgender welfare boards being established. We are also, and this is not going to happen only with one or two organizations. This is only going to be possible when we have agents of change at every field. So that's where we are trying to do and create 400 agents of change in our intervention, which will then be a sustainable model when we talk about transgender welfare boards. Um, we have recently been awarded a new grant by Amplify Change, where where we where we have tried to um, go beyond these sites where we are already working, and we will try entering the newer states with newer region where there is an actual need of having a transgender movement going on. Can we go to the next slide, please? And this is only possible if we can together, believe in empowering communities. With that note, thank you so much, and I look forward for your questions, please.
Much, Simran, for this great presentation. So I would like to ask now our participants to please feel free and add questions through the chat box to Simran. And I can see that a few people are typing. While we are waiting for participant questions, can I also just say thank you also very much for talking about both successes and hurdles, because it is something that we've been talking a lot about, that advocacy work, of course, is not easy. And sometimes you feel you take one step forward and two steps back. But if I can go back to just one slide here, Simran, you mentioned that you had success in enrolling transgenders in government schemes such as housing and pension. And I just wondered if you could say a few words about how did you achieve this change. It's very impressive, and just wondered what the learnings were from that advocacy work, what made it work, what made it successful.
Sorry. Yes, thank you for this question. So when we talk about pensions, India has a rule that above the age of 60 years old, the usual pension starts for below the poverty and marginalized groups. And what we managed to do and lobby with the government of India at the southern state, and in fact in the Delhi, is where we have ensured the age of a pension to be given for a transgender woman should be 40 and plus. And where this is an advocacy initiative that we did with the government, that is the state government, and we managed to have that uh, label of 40 been incorporated. And in some states, we have also increased the amount of pension. That is, the normal pension varies from state to state. So, for example, in Delhi, we had 1,500 INR, which is almost around $200 a month, to which we have now brought it to $400 a month, which is around 3,000 INR.
Hmm. Wonderful. Yes, thank
Sorry,
you.
sorry. It is $20. It
Hmm.
is $20, whereas now we have bought it to $40. That is around 3,000 US. Sorry, 3,000
Mhm.
INR.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah, thank you. In the meantime, we got a few more questions. Hannah is asking, thank you, Simran, for a fantastic presentation. Could I just ask, can you explain a little the different issues that arise trying to obtain a change to legal documentation in the North versus the South? Are there any major differences in the more rural regions that you work in compared with Delhi, for example?
In fact, yes, it is. If we compare, yes, it is different dynamics been played. In fact, it is very difficult in Delhi to have a name change or to have your certificates being converted into your desired preferred name and gender, as compared to when we go towards the south, because south, though people say it is more conservative or more rural, but actually is it that is not the scenario. South is more progressive than when we compare towards the north. This is what we have experienced. But every state has its own dynamics and advocacy strategy. We don't believe one shoe fits all shoe sizes, and that's where we have tailor-made interventions. What we do with different states and different organization and governments that we work with.
Mhm. Thank you. We also have a question from Ramki. Hi Simran, just wondering if the change of gender on official documents has been from male to trans, or have any been male to female or female to male? If yes, were any of these individuals non-operative? In other words, have you seen an LCA verdict mandate of no surgery should be required for legal gender change to be followed? We are doing similar work in 6 states in India, and we find that the change from um, male to trans is easy, but not male to female or female to male unless people are post-op. Thanks from Sati. Yeah.
Yes, Dr. Ramki, you're absolutely right. It is very easy for male to trans as compared to male to female, because right now, as you are completely aware, majority of the government individuals are asking for gender certificates, and you need to be at some part, you need to be even post operated to consider your legal documents from male to female. However, but if you go towards Gujarat, and if you go towards Karnataka in Bangalore, you won't find that kind of a tuffle. It's very easy to change your legal identities from male to female. But yes, Andhra and Telangana really creates a big hurdle for our transgender individuals to have their certificates as they desire. And yes, these are the two states where we are trying our level best to push the NALSA verdict of no surgery should be required for legal gender change.
Thank you. We also have a question from Biswa. Thank you, Simran. I have a question here. Out of 1,595 legal documentation, name and gender change, how many of them have done their Gazette notification? And what are the challenges in Gazette notification?
Um, There, I can give you the exact number, but the majority of these haven't actually gone through each and every Gazette notification. As you know, the Gazette notification requires a lot of time, at least a month or a two, because of their publishing in the national newspaper to be approved. one local and one national newspaper, and keeping it for 15-20 days. That requires a time. So majority of them have started with their basic um, name change and gender change on their PAN ID cards and on their Aadhaar cards, which actually does not require their Gazette. But yes, Biswa, you're very right. The Gazette notification requires at least minimum 2 months process.
Thank you. And we have one more question from Nomtandazo. You mentioned community systems in support of issues related to your project to strengthen advocacy. Please say more. How do you?
So,
Yeah.
sorry, go ahead. Go ahead. Please complete.
No, that's it. Sorry. Yeah, I just wanted to explain it, but yeah, it's clear. I think. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so as you mentioned, what did I mean by community systems in support of the issues related to our project of strengthening the advocacy part? When we talk about community systems, I clearly mentioned that it's just not individuals, but also institutions. Where we focus on building the capacity of the institutions with their something like OD, which is organization development, which is specific towards their organization. We talk about having the minimum standards of requirements as per the Indian laws for a registered organization. When we talk about individuals varies from different aspects of things. It's from basic basic hygiene. We actually start from basic hygiene, and when we have to cover the spectrum, it goes up to enrolling or making them an entrepreneur. It's that huge, big spectrum that we talk about when we talk about individual capacity building. And when it comes to the community systems, amalgamation of both the individual and the institution derives to the community systems, and that's where we come from.
Thank you. If anyone has any more questions, please feel free to use the chat box. Oh, yes, Liz is asking what further advocacy needs to happen.
So as I just mentioned right now, Liz, that is unfortunately we could not change the amendments, the most strongest amendments that was required to on the Transgender Protection Bill 2019. We could not change the little aspects out there, and that's where the advocacy now goes more further. We have just started the initiative. I mean, according to me, I have just started. Today is just a fresh day for me, and that's where we all come from, because the bill which was just passed last week did not kept us under loop and lenses when it went for passing in the parliament now, which will eventually become a law very soon. And that's where we are now trying our advocacy of knocking the doors of higher officials of government, such as the president, such as the prime minister, of at least ensuring that the bill which has been passed as in terms of transgender protection bill actually means to protect the transgender and not violent or leave the other spectrum of transgender.
Thank you. And can I just add to this? Are you working with other organizations regarding your advocacy work in terms of the transgender bill and act?
Yes, we are working with organizations, with individuals, with activists, with everyone. So it is not we who are taking the lead. it is community who is taking the lead. Out
Mhm.
here for this struggle, for the transgender protection bill struggle, nobody is the leading partner. We all are equivalent partner because we all understand that this is required for our betterment. And it is not for your and for others' betterment. It is required for our betterment. So we all are standing united. We have Sathis and we have so many individuals. Sorry, Sathi, I'm mentioning your name because I see you right in front of my eyes in the chat box. That's why I'm mentioning. But we have all the activists. We have the United Nation, sorry, the UNAIDS, who has now become the part of this movement, and they are also a part of this. So there are many, many organization, individuals, and activists.
Mhm. Thank you very much. Um, I do not see any further questions, so I would just ask Simran if is there anything else you would like to add to the presentation or just to the topics?
Um, I think yes. I just wanted to add just one statement that when we have intervention, it is always important to keep in mind that advocacy is a part of an intervention. Yes, we do believe targets and the goals of larger donors does play a vital role in an application, but it's up to us how we fit our advocacy initiatives within the peripherals and the objectives of our donors. And that's where we I would like to urge that it's us who has to decide that how we build the entire advocacy initiative in our perspective when we talk about any momentum happening in this country or any country.
Thank you. And yes, hopefully Amplified Change and other donors can support you in that. So thank you very much. That's actually the perfect way to finish our session. And thank you, Simran, so much for sharing your expertise and experience. And thank you, everyone, for participating in the webinar. I think, Simran, you shared your email address with us. I might just kind of put it on the screen. If you don't mind, if anyone would have follow-up questions. So I put on the screen Simran's email address again. And with that, I would like to wish all you a wonderful evening and afternoon, and hope you are going to join us in next webinars as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you.